Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be showing you how to operate, start, navigate, land this incredible aircraft, the Cessna Corvalis Twin Turbo, also known as the Cessna 400, also known as the Columbia 400, also known as, did somebody take a Cirrus? Or also known as Lancair Evolution, depending on how you want to look at it. This is a very cool plane and easily one of my favorite aircraft of all of Flight Sim 2024, if it weren't for the turbocharger noise, but we'll get to that a little later on. So first things first, let's go ahead and get this thing going. One of the things you'll probably observe, and again, it's tough to get a sense of size here, is just how tiny this plane is. This thing is definitely a Cirrus, but Cessna's got the label on the side of it. And so much so that when we actually climb inside of it, you will notice, I love the fact that there's gull wing doors on this thing, by the way, that we have a side stick for a controller. And that just, I don't know, blows my mind. But look at the wood. Like, wouldn't you want to make this something out of like a grippy material rather than wood? I don't know. It's just me. So this aircraft is fantastically high performance. You can get about 200 knots out of it if you're a little rough with it. You'll notice it has a back seat for people who are uh, torso-less, and of course it has a front seat which can easily accommodate another player. With fuel on this thing, yeah, you can probably get a pretty hefty range of, obviously, if you want to carry 3 passengers, you're not going to get the same range. But for a plane that is like your personal and like your best friend transport, this thing is tops. It is also not expensive. You can get one of these for about 400 grand if you happen to have that much money sitting around. So anyway, let's stop talking and get this thing started. So the way this aircraft works is pretty interesting. It doesn't feel like a Cessna, and I'll start why. First of all, there's switches above your head on this one. And one of the things I find very fascinating is they have several different sets of light switches on this aircraft. You'll notice we've got a map light above her head. You will also notice that the panel light switches, if I can get my head over here, are located in front of this console. And to make things even more exciting, you'll observe that the rocker switches for our various exterior lights are also on this central console like that. And again, it's like, what is this, a C90? The other thing you'll observe is we have 2 sets of master switches, but we only have 1 propeller on the front. Another reason for that, of course, is we have dual alternator. This little switch in the middle, of course, is going to give us our bus. There's one more switch on this thing which will confuse you, and that's this guy here. This is required above 18,000 feet. One of the fun problems with this aircraft and designed this one is they discovered that you get really, really bad vapor lock potentially inside this aircraft once you start getting to higher altitudes. This is a turbocharged aircraft, by the way. So you actually have a button that you have to hit to basically limit that effect, and yes, with the manual. And of course, if everything fails, everything's pretty much automatic. You've got an emergency backup pump too if things kind of go downhill. A couple of little goofy things. You'll notice we have a speed brake switch. If you have not set up a switch on your joystick for the purposes of speed brake extend and seat back retract, you're probably going to want to take a couple moments to do that. Speed brakes are not required for this aircraft, but they're highly recommended. It's very similar to like a Mooney 20 or something, where it just does not slow down without a little help. The last thing I find kind of interesting with this aircraft is if you look down here in the middle, you'll notice the fact that with this massive fuel switch, one of the things is if I always miss this, you actually got to manually set the fuel switch that you want. I don't know. It's just a little too luxurious for me. I don't know. It's just about it. So let's go ahead and get this ride going here. So reaching above our heads, we're going to get all 4 of the master switches. So we're going to get an angry warning when we do that. Basically, the system's running on battery. It's not much going on. You get this nice little display that pops up, letting us know we've got a full tank of gas on here. Everything's looking pretty good as far as that goes. You can actually hear everything's spinning up in my ears here. You can come down here. I can put on the heat or something like that, depending on what you want to do. Shutting off makes no difference. Again, there's no in-game consequence to it not putting the heat on. In the real world, my understanding is this plane gets really cold because of just how much heat is required off of the main engine when you're descending. So what we're going to do is we're going to get this thing started. You can see here we are a conventional piston. This is a Continental. I think it's a 550. Don't quote me on that. It is a big engine. It's 310 horsepower. Like I said, it is turbocharged, so you can get that power all the way up to 18,000 feet. No problem. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and get this thing going. So what I want to do is I'm going to start by turning the fuel on, which I've done. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my strobe and position lights, kind of letting everybody in the neighborhood know that, hey, just so you're aware, I'm about to make a bunch of noise and stuff. By the way, keep in mind we have a door seal switch in this aircraft too. Doesn't do anything. You can just use that to amuse yourself, kind of a deal. Starting it is very, very simple. We're going to come over on this side. We have no need for a special fuel pump or anything like that. We do have a primer. The primer on this one is set by temperature. It's a pretty cool day today, about 15 Celsius. Yes, I didn't change the default weather deal. But the fact of the matter is I could just basically hold this thing for about 3 or 4 seconds. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4. And that's all we need to do. We're going to now go ahead and take the red handle. We're going to put it to the full position. We're going to make sure our prop handle is all the way forward. We're going to take our little throttle and we're going to crack it just a tiny bit. Again, it's just a little bit here. Please don't flood your engine. These things are expensive. This is also a very, very well-controlled FADEC engine, too, to make our life simpler. So I'm going to come to the key. I'm going to go ahead and click it to the both position. And what I do is I actually have a key on my starter for this, or not a key on my starter. I actually have a key on my joystick for the purpose of hitting the starter because I do it so often. All right, look around, make sure we're not going to chop anybody up right away, and clear prop. That's it. Once the engine starts up, you can see here that we're about 1,000 revolutions per minute. There's DLSS in action there. I guess I don't need DLSS, but every time I fiddle with it, it messes up my VR stuff, so I'm going to leave it. So y'all have to deal with my blurry numbers there. So you can see here, we're about 1,000 revolutions per minute. If I hold my mouse over here, you can see we're about 100% propeller. It's usually like 5 or 6. Yeah, about 10% throttle is more than enough to keep us adequate there. With that going, of course, we can get the rest of our avionics rolling here. So swing up above my head. I'm going to go pop on the avionics master. They didn't give us the AP trim button. Now, on the Cessna 182 I fly in the real world, I kid you not, I forgot to hit this button a couple times. I'm like, why is the autopilot not working? Because it has no electricity. Duh. Checklist for a reason. So with that all taken care of, everything's pretty much ready to go for us. There's no special system where you have to like pull buttons or touch knobs. One thing I found kind of interesting is if you get in the back seat of this thing and you actually look up above your head, you'll notice you have all the important oxygen shutoff stuff here, but you can't actually click on any of it. So unfortunately, we're going to have to breathe and you'll have to deal with it. So now that that's taken care of, let's get our flight plan all locked away here. Give it a couple revolutions per minute. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pull the mixture back quite a bit here, about halfway. That's going to go ahead and keep that mixture nice and lean for us. Keep that nasty lead off our nice expensive spark plugs. So with that all taken care of, what I'm going to do is quickly build in a little flight plan. I'm not going to do anything fancy. I've done plenty of videos on the G1000 here. We're going to be traveling to Hartford, Connecticut because reasons. And I'm going to shut that one off. I'm press enter, activate, and there's our magenta line of victory/safety. Come to my CDI. I'm going to go set this one over to the GPS mode, just like that, so that it makes sure it's pointing in the right direction. Go to our transponder. We're just going to confirm that it is in the altitude mode to let everybody around us know that, hey, we are here. In the U.S., of course, VFR is going to be 1200, and we'll head back. Now, this is where things get a little interesting. The question becomes, what are we going to do as far as cruise altitude? Now, if you take a look at the top here, we have a 110 nautical mile journey today. So generally, you take about 10% of that. Seems to be a pretty good method if you don't actually have better ways. So that gives us an 11,000-foot cruise altitude. Now, let's do the math here. We're traveling west, so 11,000 is not possible. We can do 12 or we can do 10. I'm going to go right up to 12,000 today. So I'm going to go to my altitude. I'm going to crank this all the way up to 12,000 feet. Up, 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 up. Just like that. Perfect. And I've got 12,000 feet selected, ready to rock. I'm happy with that. That's all set. Of course, we have multiple ways to go up. And you'll see what I mean when I say up. And by the way, we are a fixed landing gear aircraft, which I think is actually commendable. I think that's a good idea, but we can still get 200 knots out of this thing, you'll see. So this is all set. Let's go ahead and reset my barometric pressure altimeter. Good, 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 good. Idiot checks. Good, 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 good. All right, delightful. So now we're going to go ahead and head over to the runway. Looking around, looks pretty good to me. We have no wind today, so obviously. We're in Provincetown, by the way, in case you're curious. Give it just a blast of power. It does not take very much to get this thing rolling on the ground, so usually give it power and pull back. One of the things you've got to remember with this aircraft is we are a turbocharged airplane. We are not just a hee-hee plane. It's one of those things that even though it's so good giving us all that extra altitude and stuff, it's a lot of extra heart. Now, one of the reasons they gave us speed brakes on this thing is just to make sure that we could keep that engine running until the absolute last possible second of slowing down when we're coming for a landing. And when we do land with this thing, I'll show you a really fun trick with speed brakes that I use in the Mooney in the real world, and it works for me, so we'll make it work in the sim too. I'm just going to come up to the line here. Go ahead and hold that brake. Engage that, and we'll just quickly run through a quick little flow here to make sure everything's good. We're just going to do one of those real quick here. It looks good. Lights on the side. We're going to go. Landing light comes on just to let everybody know that we're about to cause some shenanigans. Reach above our heads. One last check of all of our master switches there. Looks good. Our settings are good. Runway is going to be in that direction. Good. Oops, looks like we missed something. We got to make sure our flaps are down. This is an aircraft you take off with flaps. So you can certainly take off without flaps. I find it just makes it heavy. Speaking of takeoff on this thing, the rotate speed, as you can see here, is a very, very, very high 75 knots for those of you who are used to these planes. Now, the interesting thing is you can actually start lifting up on the nose at about 65, and when it hits 75, it'll kind of pop off the runway. Now, you'll see what I mean. All right, we're good to go. I'm going to go ahead and check the approach. Looks good to me. Let's roll. You're just going to give it a tap of power, let that turbocharger kind of catch up on its own. In the real world, what would happen here is your RPM would basically climb a little bit, kind of stabilize. Then your manifold pressure would crawl just a little tiny bit up as the turbocharger basically started taking over. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to get as much runway as I possibly can. Now, one of the things you find kind of interesting here is that when I take turns with this airplane, you'll notice it's nice and precise and it's crisp turning. Now, in the real world, that's not the case. The real-world version of this aircraft does not have a steerable nose wheel. So when you do stuff like I'm doing right now, I mean, look at this. This is like ballet, basically. You could not. You just have to stomp on your brakes to make it work. All right, there we go. We're ready to go. So one little trick I found that works really, really well, at least for me. Again, everybody's a little different. This is a flight simism here. But one of the things you can do is if you take your prop handle and you back it up just a little bit, and by just a little bit, like I'm cranking it to like 98% here, what that will do is that will prevent you from getting this ridiculous little propeller red surge kind of a thing over here on the right. And it's only going to make a difference of like, 15 feet of runway. So it's not going to make that much of a difference here. All right, so we're going to go ahead and hold the brakes. Now, the one thing that they say in the manual on this one is you can do a standing takeoff, but it's not recommended. They recommend rolling takeoff. So we're going to do 2 phases to our takeoff. I'm going to release my parking brake. We're going to push the throttle about halfway up, let the turbocharge stabilize, and then we're going to smoothly apply full power. Now, in the real world, when you do this, the whole plane will go like that as the thing basically catches. And there's my least favorite part of this aircraft, which is that nice hissing noise to remind you that it's turbocharged. We're going to rip down this runway. There's 55 knots. There's 60. We're going to go pull back just a little bit. We're just lighting up the front wheel. There's 70, 75, and we're airborne. Did you see how it just like that as soon as you hit 75? Love it. So we're going to pull the nose up just a little bit here. I'll give myself a little bit of right rudder. I'd expect to have to need a lot more right rudder for a plane this powerful. I'm going to bring up that notch of flaps once we cross 90 knots. We're going to pull up just a little bit steeper here. And if you look over to my right, you'll observe the fact the aircraft is at about 2,520 revolutions per minute. And because we pulled that little power back, we're not going to be bouncing off the red line limiter. As a matter of fact, I can gently pull it back just a little bit. Bam! Look at that. Right into the green arc without any shenanigans. Delightful. So now we're going to go ahead and continue our climb here. Again, a little bit of right rudder on this thing. You can see the Plymouth Memorial chilling. Not Plymouth. Obviously, that's not where we are, but you can get a look at that rock over on that side of things. And now what we're going to do is we're going to swing ourselves over towards our destination. Come to my right. Go ahead and get rid of the landing light at this point. Nice. And we're just going to start a gentle climb. Now, there's a couple different speeds we can climb at. Let me come down here so y'all can see nice. You can see here we're currently at our VY of about 113 knots, but we're going pretty hard on this engine right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull us into the white arc here, which is about 33 inches. Now, the interesting thing is from a color scheme perspective, that shouldn't be the color green because we're not technically in the safe operating range of this aircraft. So I'm going to pull it back just a little. Again, it's not safe operating. It's suggested. Continuous range is what they call. There we go. I'm going to give it a couple blasts of trim. There's my lovely 7.5 degrees up. I don't know. It's just the way physics work. I'm going to give it a bunch of trim here. I try to trim it pretty smooth, and then we switch on the autopilot. Autopilot comes on. You can see a roll mode clicks on. We're going to flip on to nav mode. The real world autopilots are way more gentle than that. It would not snap your neck when you pull that. And I can see my airspeed is getting a little fast here. So I'm going to go ahead and select flight level change mode with this button here. And then I can do my nose up, nose down to basically dictate how aggressive I want to be. Now for this one, I'm going to do 110. The book basically says that anything between 110 and 130 is fine for a climb with this thing. Obviously, if it's an emergency, we can climb at our VX right here of 100 knots. Downside to climbing at the VX, of course, is we're not going to climb quite as fast. But you can see here very, very clearly we're doing about 110, about 2,800, about 1,300 feet per minute. This thing is ripping. So what I like to do now is just run around, check to make sure everything's pretty good here. These handles are all where they need to be, which I'm happy about. If we have any lighting issues or anything like that, you're not wearing your safety belt. I failed as a pilot. I also did not give a safety briefing, which was shenanigans. One of the things I want to point out, though, is this is such a high power for aircraft. When I look at this wing, you notice how steep my cabin angle is right now? We are chilling, and we're not even at full power anymore, to give you an idea of just how overpowered this darn thing is. But I think really the advantage to this one is its incredible speed. Let's get to the top of the climb. There. So what I'm starting now is coming down onto my climb altitude. I intentionally went high. Here's what I want you to observe. Notice my throttle's all the way forward, my blue handle's all the way forward, my red handle's all the way forward, and my engine is just right now. That's a technical term for not performing very well. This aircraft, unlike the real one, of course, which does have a turbocharger, so you don't have to fill up the mixture that much, requires you to adjust the mixture as you climb. So you'll notice if I pull the handle out, whoa! Just as fast as I did that, I get slammed into my seat. Now, I'm not sure why they chose to model it that way, because that's hopelessly inaccurate. Again, we're turbocharged. We can fiddle with that when we get to cruise, basically. But one of the things you'll notice is as we climb up, you do have to make an adjustment to that to basically get it. Now, if you're saying, how am I supposed to adjust this thing if I don't know what's going on? The cool thing is they do give you some engine monitoring stuff here. So if I go to my engine page and I go up to my lean page, you can actually see here, yeah, I had to give it full RPM because I was terrified it was damaging something here. Oh, I'll pull it back just a little bit. There we go. Nice. But you'll see here our exhaust gas temperature is chilling large and in charge, about 1,510 RPM, Fahrenheit. Thank you. And what I can do is I can actually lean this mixture and just monitor this number. And I notice when I pull this mixture out that my RPM jumps a little bit. My exhaust gas temperature does too. So I'm just gently pulling it out, gently pulling it out, gently pulling it out. There's 1530. Gently pulling out. What percentage am I? Oh my goodness. That's 27% mixture. Holy smokes. There you go, 1,570, 1,580. There we go. So you can see the RPM started to come back down. So we're actually a little bit too rich here. So I'm going to push that back in about that far, and that should be perfect. So now what we're going to do is we're going to trim up for cruise here. Cruise settings vary. They recommend 85% of the regular Garmin, the one that they use. We have a little diagram here, which will tell you how much power we're having. So we got to do this the old-fashioned way. Obviously, anything in the green is considered continuous. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that to the top of 29. I'm just going to reduce my RPM a little bit so that we get into that lovely green arc. You can see here, just by taking a quick gander, we're green, which is ideal. And then, of course, what we would normally do is make another adjustment to our mixture to make sure that's all set. But obviously, we're cruising here. And you can pull that back just a little bit if you need to, just for the sake of saving kind of volume, if you want to think about it another way. Now, if we were over 18,000 feet in the real one, of course, we'd have to hit this switch. We're not over 18,000 feet, so we don't have to worry about that. Again, it's to stop that nasty, nasty vapor stuff from going in the engine. So now that we've, again, 12,000 feet isn't very high, and we're cruising, we've got about 87 miles to go, and you can see my airspeed is cranking up. It does not take much in this one. As a matter of fact, if you come down to my TAS, I'm doing 197. That's moving. We are definitely moving here. We're slowing down a little bit because we did that. But my ground speed, obviously, would basically be my airspeed because there's no wind today, kind of a deal like that. So now at this particular point in the journey, it's a good time to start playing with some fuel management problems. So if I take a look down here, I'll go ahead and bring us out of engine mode here. You'll notice that we've been sucking gas out of the left side for a while now. And because of that, obviously, we've done a pretty good job depleting it. So that's something we definitely want to be thinking about. Go back up. We don't need to set that. So you can see you got a little bit of fuel out of that side. So I'm going to come down here, and I just got to be careful when you do this that you don't accidentally. Does everybody see how it's on the right setting? You have to kind of look. Excuse me, could you move your elbow? You'll notice how we're pointing right now. You have to hold your mouse over this and roll your scroll wheel towards you to swing to the left side. Be really careful not to crank it again to the right, otherwise your engine's going to make an unhappy noise, and you're going to be like, whoopsies, and you're going to have to go ahead and get that. So at this point, I'll skip the trip and get us all the way over to our top of descent. All right, so we're about 50 miles away from our destination. I can confirm that very quickly by just taking a little look up here. We're at 12,000 feet. Now, when we descend with this aircraft, we have to kind of leave the power in. We can't just pull the throttle to idle and go down. No, we destroy our engine. So one of the things we actually, well, the turbocharger, then the engine. But what we do normally, of course, is we have speed brakes on this thing, which makes our life easier. So what I like to do is plan for about 1,000 feet per minute speed brakes deployed. Now, if you do the math real quick, you recognize the fact that we are 15 minutes away from our destination. 12 minutes at 1,000 feet per minute would get us all the way down to where we need to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here and kind of pre-select our target altitude here. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to be 1,000 feet is going to be the TPA. I think it's technically 1,018 feet, but I'm going to be honest with you. I've never seen anybody in Hartford fly at exactly 1,018 intentionally. I guess there's always that one person. But the fact of the matter is here that that's going to get us plenty here. So that's going to be about 1,000 feet. It's going to be a target altitude. And when we get to 12 minutes, we'll start our descent. That's looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come over here to VS. I'm going to go ahead and nose down, speed brakes out. See that little that you get slammed into? Now you'll notice I have to push my throttle forward in order to maintain the same speed I was going a few moments ago. The speed brakes on this thing are way too effective. I think the speed brakes, at least I've encountered on aircraft that this size, when you click them, basically your nose kind of rumbles a little bit, kind of a thing like that. But you'll notice with the speed brakes extended, I'm sitting here at 2,431 inches of mercury, and I'm still decelerating even though I'm 1,000 feet per minute. This is so bad, as a matter of fact, you can actually see that my estimated time en route is increased. Now watch what happens if I retract those speed brakes. Now keep in mind, in the real world, speed brakes are on or off. Unlike a big airliner where you can kind of feather them, we don't have that luxury in an aircraft this small. So if I pull them back out, again, keep in mind, we're basically keeping the same cruise power we did a minute ago. It's 28 inches. Let me pull that back a little bit. Watch how fast this aircraft goes spiking right back up to 180 knots. And again, I think they exaggerated that a little bit, but I don't know. Again, I don't own one of these things. I only know what I've read in the POH. But you can see after about a minute's climbing speed, we're almost up to 180, which is going to be a pretty top limit on this thing. Obviously, I could pop the speed brakes out and we can kind of feather them back and forth on the way down, but I just wanted you to see the difference. Now, if I come over here, my power, let's say I reduce this to 25 inches of mercury here. Let's pop that to that position. You'll see we're more or less topping out 180 knots without the help of the speed brakes. So this is pretty good. One thing you do have to remember, though, is on your way down, you do have to start enriching the mixture, rather. You can give it all the money you want. It's not going to make the engine run better. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't enrich this, you're going to have an issue with it. And the best way to think about this is basically push it in about 5% every 1,000 feet is kind of an easy way. So at this point, we should be about 40%. That's about pretty good. And that will get a nice even mixture. So what I will do is I'll continue my descent until we get a little closer to Hartford. We're about 4 minutes out or so. I'm looking out the window. I can already start to see. Well, in the real world, you can see the city. Actually, that's not true. In the real world, this will be a brown haze, especially this time of year. So we need to really slow down now. We're doing $1.70 here, and we're 4 minutes away, and you can see our altitude's basically exactly what we intended it to be on our way down. So we just have a couple little things we want to do. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go and pop on our landing light there, just kind of let everybody know. Turn towards the fuelless tank, which is going to be the one on the right. Mixture's all set, propeller's all set, throttle's still up pretty darn high right now. So what I'm going to do is take advantage of those lovely speed brakes and pop those out one more time. So in the real world, they snap out like a razor blade. They click like a butterfly knife, kind of a thing like that. They're a little quicker than that. And I'm just going to let it, oh boy, I'm getting pushed up against my harness. But you're not, because, oh, she's got a safety belt on. My apologies. Is the safety belt going through her jacket? No, she's good. She's good. I don't know. She's always flying with me for some reason. One of these days I'll change the setting. All right, so we're on our way down. About $1.30 is a little bit slower here. Now, $1.30 for obviously translation purposes here. 130 knots. Perfectly fine. I can even increase the power a little bit if I wanted to, but we're good. Like I said, we're about 5 minutes out. Plenty of time to come down to our altitude. Obviously, in the real world, when we do a descent this aggressive, it's going to be a little bit hard on our ears, so just kind of keep that in mind. Another thing that's kind of handy here is if you actually observe, because we're going so slow, we can actually start thinking about flaps. And again, you can notice here, takeoff flaps is 127, which seems kind of low, but if you actually look at how far they dip down, oh, it's like how they yell at you, don't ever, ever use flaps above this particular altitude. I guess it's just, again, true airspeed versus indicated airspeed. But you'll see I'm within my flap operating speed, and I could theoretically drop a notch of flaps. Whoa, where are you going? Where are you going? Always pay attention to your autopilot. Let's get into the pattern. All right, we're just about into the pattern at this point here. I'll watch my hand for the sun visor. Like I said, we're going for about 1,000 feet here. I've still got the speed brakes out. What I like to do with this one that works really well is you basically trade speed brakes for flaps. And what that will do is that'll keep your level of drag up as you're kind of getting yourself ready for your last approach. So in Hartford, for this particular runway, we're typically a right traffic pattern. The reason being is you've got a city right over there, so I guess they don't like you flying too close. Also, if you look below me, obviously these houses don't like me very much, but the trees do not seem to mind. So our runway today is runway 2, so I'm just going to go pop myself into a downwind like this. There we go. We'll go ahead and start our nice gentle descent. Taking a peek out the window there, looking pretty good. Got to come to my right just a touch. There we go. Nice. So this aircraft in a descent, there's a couple things we just have to double check to make sure we're good. Obviously, landing light is on. We got to click the flaps. When we start a little descent here, what I like to do is put the flaps in right away. Of course, when you put your flaps in, make sure you're at the correct speed to put your flaps in. There we go. So we've gone and set ourselves to about 90 knots or so, and let the nose start coming down. My RPM's kind of come up to full. Just looking out my back window there. Got to come to my right just a little bit. Perfect. And basically what we're trying to do is keep about 70 to 80 knots. Seems to be a pretty optimum speed for this aircraft. Again, it's really hard to see out the back window there, so what I'll do is that. So I've got full flaps at this particular point. My speed brakes have been retracted. My RPM is all the way full. My mixture's all the way full. And now we're going to go ahead and take our base turn. I need quite a bit of right rudder for this turn. There we go. Nice and gentle. Again, taking a look at the side, I'm taking advantage. I mean, in the real world, obviously I can crouch, but it's really, really awkward. And you'll know exactly what I mean the first 50 times you do it. There we go. We're going to square up the runway on my base. I'm going to add a little bit of power as we come around this turn and start to slow down just a bit. Ah, my gosh, you're right in my way. Thank you. There we go. We're going to come right from base to final here. Now, one of the things I found very interesting about this aircraft when trying to learn how to land it is the fact that it gets very sinky. Once you get under that 80 knots, you're going to find that you really have to put a lot of elevator on it to kind of keep it from just dropping on you. So just kind of keep that in mind that obviously as you increase load, it makes it a little bit more difficult. We're just a touch high here, and also we overshot badly here. which is exactly what I expected to happen. Ugh, embarrassing. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and set ourselves up for a relatively simple landing. But one of the tricks I like to do is if you have your hand near your speed brake to be able to kick it, you can actually pop your speed brake out during the flare. And that actually smooths your flare out quite considerably. All right, we're going to line ourselves up. We're a little low, but not too bad. There we go. A little bit higher, a little bit higher. Hartford actually has an extra steep approach for those of you who take a look at the actual approach plates on it. I kind of like the extra steep approach, but I'm also not a big fan of, coming in at high speed. There we go. About 75 knots. Looks pretty groovy. So one of the things you'll notice, like I said, you see how my nose is kind of wandering back and forth there. You're going to make sure your yaw damper is off. There's the big old number 2. You can see your speed is pretty good here. A little fast, a little fast. I'm just going to pull right to idle. We got plenty of room here. There we are. We're going to lift the nose up just like we do with any other plane. Pop out the speed brakes. Now, when you pop your speed brakes, you're not going to feel it, and then you're going to feel it all at once. And there's the 750 mark right there. Don't forget to use your ailerons after coming down. Gentle on the brakes. And you'll notice my landing run is about the same as you probably expect on something like a 172. Go ahead and get all the stuff out of the way. We'll go ahead and kill our landing lights, and then we have ourselves a really, really solid airplane. Absolutely fantastic. The performance on this thing is incredible. It's like a slightly less friendly Cirrus. SR-22 is the one I'm particularly referring to. But I really respect just the speed of the thing. There's a couple systems bits that are a little odd for me, but again, it doesn't change the overall enjoyment of this airplane. And obviously in VR, this thing's like a little tiny sports car. Enjoy.